Okay.
Yeah.
What's up, gang?
Hey.
We live out here in these streets.
Yeah.
It's good to see you guys.
I realized
Likewise.
last week when we started talking, like making a plan on who was going to say what first, and Mike was like, "Why did you guys figure this out once we went live?" And I'm like, "Oh well, most of our listeners aren't listening on YouTube, so we don't really look at it like we're professionals. Like we're professionals on YouTube." Hello, everybody that's here in the chat already.
Yeah, what's up?
Karen, we got to do Act Turtle maybe tomorrow if you're up for it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If you're
I
up
should
for
be
it.
able to. Mm-hmm.
Not is it? Act Turtle. All right.
Act Turtle, yeah.
Let's rock and roll, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Welcome to Better Talk Saul. I'm Dylan Schuck.
I'm Dan Fields.
And I'm Karen Peterson.
In this podcast, we're discussing the penultimate episode of the AMC original series, Better Call Saul. You're listening to Better Talk Saul. In this podcast, we're not going to pretend that Breaking Bad doesn't exist, so tread lightly if you're concerned about that show's spoilers. And that's where we are on the spoilers for Breaking Bad. We don't want to spoil that show for people.
Hey, when often do you say penultimate? Is that really just a word you use with TV? Is there ever a moment you might say that otherwise?
Books, like if it's an anthology series or something. Yeah, it's the second to last of anything. So
books are like that.
Media.
Books are like that thing with the pages, right? The paper thing or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Got
mm-hmm.
Check those out.
They don't always have words. Sometimes they just have pictures.
That's a good question, though, Dan. I thought when you were first asking it, I thought you were asking if it's like something that I say only. But
no.
Now I understand.
Just in general,
I didn't coin the phrase, but yeah, that's actually a pretty good question. Where else is it used other than?
I'm going to use it when I'm eating candy. This is the penultimate.
This is the penultimate M&M. We should start doing that. We'll start using that.
Do it.
It's a great word. I love that word.
Is.
Every time I get a new follower on Twitter, I'll tweet at the last follower I got and tell them they're my penultimate follower.
There you go.
Yes.
Karen.
Hey.
Welcome back this week. Last week you were there for the intro. You sounded like me when you introduced yourself. And
no, I wasn't here last week at all.
Yeah, you were, because at the beginning of the episode we said I'm Karen Peterson. It sounded like Dylan, but then you didn't speak much. You were really shy last week.
It was a Norman Bates situation for Dylan and you.
Apparently so.
Yeah, whenever anybody's late, I'll just do their little voice or whatever. And Karen meant to come on; she wanted to, but it didn't work out.
It didn't. I am so
just
sad.
like Dan.
Oh, good.
A couple weeks ago, Karen Peterson is toughing it through with the vid.
I do. I've got the Rona,
and it seems like it's been pretty bad, but I'm glad that you're well enough to come on. For the record, guys, both of these people, I told them if you can't make it, it's okay. We'll be okay. But they both wanted to tough through it because they're for you guys. They're here for the people. Yeah. They're like vote John for council. They're a person of the people.
We are dedicated.
But
just hit your life alert. Squeeze your life alert if things get bad.
Yep. Exactly.
Speaking of which, Steps was brought to you by Life Alert.
Yeah, I've fallen and I can't get up.
For all of our listeners out there that are concerned about that. Anyway, so we, right off the bat, Dan.
Yes, me.
What? You predicted.
I did. I nailed
Carol Burnett stumbling upon him on the new computer. The second you said that, I was like, damn, that is perfect. It's 100% what happened and came into fruition. As soon as she's on her computer, I was like, fucking Dan. Broken clock is right twice a day. And Dan is Better Talk Saul. Better Talk Saul's broken clock. That's how we refer to him here.
Don't ask me for another prediction. I am tapped out.
I will ask you for another prediction.
Okay,
but
to give one more
at the end of the episode. But good call. That was a really good prediction. And Karen is so enthralled with the prediction, she's frozen solid.
Are you serious?
No,
you froze. Oh, you froze for a split second. Anyway,
I'm just really still.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, that was a great prediction. We also predicted that this would be a Kim-centric episode. The only thing I would like better is to spend 10 more minutes with a montage of her life as soon as leaving Jimmy's house to get to where she is, but it's not super important. I just would have liked that, but it's not like I was disappointed by this, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, how did she end up choosing Florida, and why did she dye her hair brown? And yeah.
Now
Why'd she stop doing the
All the
ponytail?
important things.
Why'd she stop doing the ponytail? We need to know the origin of her hair. We need to have a whole spin-off series about this, or a movie, spin-off movie. We don't even have to do a whole series. Not everything has to be a series. But this was either way a very Kim-centric episode, capped off with a good conversation between her and Jesse. And I think the irony of that conversation, and obviously we'll get to it, but is that they both kind of had the same roles on their respective series. Except, I'm pretty sure Walter White and Jesse Pinkman never had sex in the show. You can let us know in the comments if that's something that happened. But other than that, they had very similar roles in to the characters, enabling them and helping harvest. Enabling to some extent.
I disagree a little bit. I think that in a lot of ways, Kim took on more of Walt's role for a long time.
I think
she wasn't Jesse. She was definitely the instigator in a lot of things, and she was egging him on for a lot of it. And then eventually kind of things turned. But really, so many of their shenanigans, and then eventually what they did to Howard, that was all Kim was driving that, not Jimmy.
Well, yeah. I would make the argument Jesse was steering the ship a little bit to some extent in some parts early on in the show, to some extent. Like he was the one he was early on very, not completely steering the ship, but he was pushing along with it on the same page as him at the very least. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say they were the exact same beat by beat for sure. I'll agree with you on that, but they still had that similar kind of role, except the sex with Walt and Jesse Pinkman, which I am going to be putting out a fan fiction on this.
I was going to say, buddy, this is like a Draco Malfoy Harry Potter erotic.
Yeah, we got a fan fiction in the works. Dan and I have been kind of spitballing it, and that's something for our Patreon subscribers that you're going to get.
Oh yeah,
in your inbox, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, a lot of glistening phalluses and things like that. It's great.
But yeah, I completely agree that Kim was definitely driving a bigger driving force than Jesse ever was, for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think it was cool to see them interacting in this little like millimeter of a Venn diagram of them being in each other's lives, of them being in Saul's life, and it overlapped just a hair. Before,
well, and it made total sense with the trajectory of Kim's career, where she took on all that pro bono work and was, working with a lot of people that would otherwise have been going public defender in Albuquerque, and that's totally within the circle that Jesse was running in at that time. So it makes complete sense that their lives would have intersected at some point.
And this show loves a two people standing outside smoking conversation moment. And it was, I feel like it was a little like a lot of things this season. What's the word I'm looking for? Like they didn't have to do it. It was fun and it was nice. And
are you thinking of fan service? Is that the term you're thinking?
Maybe, or just like they did it for themselves. Like even like Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould. Like it's like this would be fun. Like let's figure out a way to bring these two characters together, even though it wasn't mandatory and it didn't really move the plot, but it was nice to see.
Perhaps it was a little indulgent.
Indulgent. That's the word I'm looking for, baby. Thank you.
I must say, ever since I started talking about the Walter White and Jesse Pinkman fan fiction, our viewership on YouTube has plummeted.
Exploded.
Bummer. It's plummeted. People have jumped off as quick as they possibly could. By the way, if most of our listeners by far listen to it on the podcast, if you do want to join in, we do stream this live on YouTube now. If you go to our Twitter at BetterTalkSaul, there's a bunch of links to our YouTube channel where you can subscribe, get the notification. Anybody that's in the chat right now, smash that like button. Just like it's Jesse and Walter White in the fan fiction, smash it that hard, and we'll get along with the. We'll move right along with the episode. It was interesting. It is cool that there's only one time a season, or not. I'm sorry, one time an entire series where we can say it's not the penultimate episode of the season. It's the penultimate episode of the entire series, and it is a little. I don't know if it's hit me yet that this is for sure. This is ending. You know, we've been doing this. I've been doing this podcast, and Dan's been. I think Dan was on the first episode. For so long. You know, it's been 8 years of doing this podcast. And
jeez, really?
Yeah, I think it started 2014, maybe 2015. So maybe 7 years, maybe 7 years. But it's just been so long with so much life happened to them that amount of time. And definitely the longest podcast I had. That was the longest podcast I've ever had. This is one of my first podcasts that I did, and still running strong. We're going to do an episode next week, and then the week after that, if you guys will join me, we'll do like a kind of overarching Goodbye Better Call Saul episode 2, and then perhaps stay subscribed because maybe we might do some Breaking Bad fun. It's going to be slow and probably one season at a time episode, so not a bunch of episodes. Definitely not one episode per episode. But we might do a little fun with that too, because I will want to rewatch Breaking Bad as soon as the series is over, which I think will be pretty fun.
Yeah, and shout out to Mike in the chat. First episode, February 8th, 2015. So wow.
So getting close to 8 years, 7.5.
Man.
And shout out to the listeners that have been there the whole time. I know Shakita was. Unless Mike, you've been there a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're there from the beginning. You can let us know in the chat. But it's been a long time, and it's been a lot of fun. And we've gone through so many different iterations of the podcast. It was like different co-hosts every episode, or then I'd have one finally for a whole season, and they wouldn't come back next season. But finally, we got grounded with Dan and Karen Peterson. Yeah, Endless Mike's been there from the beginning. Yeah, wow. Shout out to Endless Mike. He really doesn't end. He doesn't end. He's proven that.
Thank you, Mike.
And we love him for it.
All right, so the episode is called Waterworks, and it was, it's obviously a little bit of a double entendre, not only with her crying in the bus, which was an incredibly moving scene, but also her job that she works for a sprinkler company. All right, like a sprinkler company, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also kind of brought to my attention, I'm like, if she could be this good at selling sprinklers for water, why couldn't she be this good at selling cans of water? Which is why I want to give a shout out to Liquid Death, our sponsor of the podcast.
Oh, damn. Karen's got a Liquid Death.
Karen just came through with the Liquid Death also. I know that she was like, I can't wait to bust this out.
I actually had this ready last week.
Shout outs to Liquid Death, our sponsor of the podcast.
Man, I'm drinking air. Sorry, guys. I'm getting left out.
Refreshing mountain spring water. Murder your thirst with Liquid Death. Use promo code BetterTalkSaul at any convenience store where Liquid Death is sold. And you will be just as happy as Kim was by the end of this episode. That's what's going to happen to you. You're going to be thrilled with life.
It's quite refreshing.
Yeah, it's the final episode, by the way, is called Saul Gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. No, I think he's gone, right?
You know what's crazy? Also, I was thinking about Nacho being on the show. It seems so long ago.
I know.
So the break, listen, that didn't help. And think about that scene in the gym where he could, being anti-Semitic about Kevin. That seems like 2 years ago. It's been a long season.
What are you talking about?
Remember at the very first episode when he went to put the cocaine in Howard's locker?
Oh, yeah.
That seems like another show, another season, but that was this season.
Even Howard being on the show seems like forever ago.
Yeah, right.
So at the beginning of the show, we get the little teaser of Saul Goodman sitting alone in his office, bouncing a ball off the wall. Francesca calls him through his earphone, complaining that he hadn't seen any clients for a past waiting room, and takes out something from a large envelope. It's divorce papers, and eventually he dials back Francesca and says, "What are you waiting for? Send her in." And then we get this bookend. This book ended later in the episode. Is my internet cutting out right now?
It was.
You're okay.
Or am I rock and rolling?
A little bit. You're okay.
All right.
Keep going.
We might as well just jump right along to that part also, just so we can keep those kind of together. The second part of that later in the episode is a very interesting and unique way of editing through these last couple episodes, I must say.
Yeah. It's not bad. I kind of the back and forth between the color and black and white. It's
right. I definitely don't mean it as a bad thing. I mean as unique in a good way.
Sure.
It's kind of unpredictable. It doesn't really follow a pattern. But Saul is very dismissive to her, and then we get an understanding about why he's so rude. Not why, but the pattern of how he's being rude to her ever since she left him. He started being really cold and shut off to her. And he says, "Have a nice life, Kim." As far as we know, that's the last time they'll ever see each other. We don't know if they're going to see each other again.
With their eyes. Yeah, sure.
That's what seeing is, Dan.
Well, they talk, they communicate, but yes, correct. Thank you.
Correct. And then she's disturbed about how callous he's become. And that's maybe a little editorializing from the Breaking Bad wiki. By the way, we used the Breaking Bad wiki. Shout out to the Breaking Bad wiki that we kind of run through on the episode. And she's not only about him being callous, but the hardened criminals that he's taking on as clients, such as Emilio for his next appointment that don't do paperwork. Outside of training heavily, Kim shares a cigarette with Emilio's partner in crime, Jesse Pinkman. For those of you, I'm sure most people remember, but Emilio was the first person that Walter White killed. And he's the person who got his body disintegrated in a bathtub and then sunk through the floor in a bloody mess in, I believe, the second or third episode of Breaking Bad.
He was also a rat. That one. But don't forget that he was flipped. And so I was wondering if he had already been working for the cops when he went to see Saul, or if that was probably part of Saul's thing. It's like, hey, buddy, look, just rat out on your guys and you're going to be scot-free. I bet it was after, because shortly after that is probably when their house got busted, when Jesse was next door having sex with the neighbor, and why he didn't get busted.
John for Council said Amelia plays role well. I agree. Like sometimes people come and reprise it and just try to overdo it. They haven't played it in a long time, and I think he did a pretty good job. Kind of not the least cheesy line ever about him not having paperwork, or he doesn't do paperwork. But that's fine. Jesse recognizes Kim because she defended Combo, and it showed Combo being represented by her earlier in the season, or did it show that? Or
I don't remember actually seeing that.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong about that. And then Jesse asks if Saul lives up to his bombastic advertising, eventually reiterating his question, is he good? After some contemplation, Kim replies, when I knew him, he was. And then just kind of runs off in the rain.
Yeah, I felt bad for Kim in that scene because they had such a great relationship, and I know that she broke his heart. But man, that's not editorializing. He was being a dick. The way he was so dismissive, the way he made her wait to make it seem how busy he was. He seemed like such a douchebag in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's the things that people do to kind of minimize their own pain. Like he was so hurt by her that his way of getting back at her is to just make it seem like she didn't hurt him at all and he doesn't care. And she knows perfectly well that that's not true, but there's still, when you're on the receiving end of that, it doesn't matter how well you used to know somebody, it hurts to get treated that way, especially someone who you've been through so much with and you had such a strong relationship with.
Yeah.
Yep, sure. I definitely agree. I will confirm that Combo was not in Better Call Saul at all. So they didn't get him back. But we commented last week about Jesse Pinkman looking, at least initially, that for me, for that first shot of him, I was like, oh man, he looks old. He just looked just like Jesse Pinkman in this. He didn't look old. Like fine. He's kind of, in a way, he's kind of Paul Rudding a little bit.
Yeah.
He's a good looking guy. He's aging well. He's an actor though. I don't, when these actors age well, it's like, good for you. That's your job, bro. You spend a lot of money on your face and you should look good. That's your livelihood. But whatever.
Now, do we know that he spends a lot of money on his face, Dan Fields? Where did we get this information?
Who, Paul Rudd? Of course he does, man. You kidding me?
No. Aaron
Paul. Oh, I don't know. Maybe he does. They all do, dude.
Maybe Paul Rudd does some light touch-ups.
Yeah, that's a trick. You do light touch-ups every year, so it's not a huge change when you're like an old man.
What are your thoughts on this, Karen?
No, we don't. Please move on.
In 2010, Kim, now sporting longer, darker hair, cuts potatoes in the kitchen in Florida. Both she and her boyfriend, Glenn was just perfect, right? Like he's perfect for what they were trying to get us to feel.
Yep.
Like he's not an asshole, but he is as
so
vanilla
boring.
He's as vanilla as it gets.
He is the
Polar
exact opposite. I mean,
yeah.
You know, it shows kind of this whole type of, not really a montage, but kind of a montage where it's kind of showing her kind of unwilling to make any decisions.
Oh yeah. Notice that every single choice, not even like what ice cream should we get at the office party. She did not make one decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And after being a person that made decisions very much so, you see that she has trauma, right? This is serious trauma that she's gone through, obviously, to say the least. And I'm glad the show talked about that, showed that, because a lot of shows kind of gloss over that, right? She saw somebody murdered in front of her and thought she was going to go murder somebody herself half hour after that or something like that.
But this is why this show's so good, is it just showed it through all that instead of having her boyfriend be like, what's your deal? You don't make any decisions anymore. It's almost like you're scared. It just,
she's
why don't you open up about your past?
Yeah, she's managed to find herself kind of a niche of people who don't expect her to make any decisions and who are perfectly fine, just, letting her be this kind of wishy-washy, indecisive person.
Somebody tweeted at us, and I don't mean this in a bad way, whoever did tweet at us, but they were saying that this episode was boring. And I was like, duh. Not that I thought this episode was boring, because I thought it had a slow pace, but that's fine. I would take this over those first episodes when we didn't know what was going on, and there was a lot of action going on, and I didn't know what was going on. So I'd take this over that any day. But it was purposefully dull, because that's the feeling it wanted you to have. It wasn't an accident. They weren't losing your attention, right?
I thought it was brilliant. It was one of the it was one of the smartest episodes they've had maybe ever. I don't know. I thought, because it was such a visceral depiction of depression, grief, PTSD, and just being haunted by what's happened in the past. I thought that it was brilliantly portrayed, and I think that Ray Seahorn, I hope she just won herself an Emmy with this episode, because it was just, this was such a standout. It really was. And yeah, it is a deliberately slow paced, and her life in Florida is deliberately as mundane and boring as it can possibly be, and that is all 100% intentional. And if people couldn't find the artistic value in that, I feel bad for them.
Do you find that the decision between a certain type of mayonnaise and Miracle Whip to be as riveting as a decision in Breaking Bad is whether or not he's going to kill this man that he has bike locked to the chain. I think there's a conversation there. I think they might be equally riveting.
I mean,
but
I've had
you
more
can't
than
even
one
compare
argument
those.
with a loved one about the validity of Miracle Whips. So I related hardcore to that.
I
So.
related more with the Miracle Whip conversation than I ever could with bike locking some guy's neck to a
Exactly.
pole. So
I've never done that.
I
I've
can
never
relate with
eaten
it.
it.
But I like that they show her eating a tuna fish sandwich and that she knows that her lack of making a decision. She doesn't like the outcome. She doesn't like it. And I don't notice taste between Miracle Whip, but we don't need to go into that.
Karen, I'm
Miracle
glad you
Whip.
mentioned about depression and all that too. Like, I feel like I've never seen a show it that well through. She was emotionless, just like coasting through life, having her awful sex with that guy, just her boring dictated work back and forth where she was a shell of her old self. And that scene on the bus, I mean, my God, Waterworks, right?
There's nothing like a movie or show showing somebody going through the motions, like somebody staring off at the ceiling during a sex scene. Like, and what was he saying?
Most boring guy ever.
He's like saying,
and
yep.
he was like, yes. He was like, yes.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is even worse.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, why? Oh, no.
Yeppers. Yep.
Everything about this is so bad.
Yeah. I do like that he is saying yep. Like, think that might be the first time in television
and not
history.
even particularly enthusiastically either.
No.
That's Ray Seahorn, man. She's really hot, man. You should be saying Yahoo, not yep.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real here. Karen, do you have any knowledge of future projects that Ray Seahorn is attached to or is going to be working on? Like, are we going to be able to see her again anytime soon?
Not off the top of my head, but I can look at that while you guys talk about other things.
Sweet. Let's talk about Ray Seahorn's future projects, Dan. I would be excited to see her again. It would be disappointing if she ends up not, I feel like if an actress or an actor doesn't start doing movies successfully while the series is still going on, they often don't take off afterward. With the exception, I would say, of Bryan Cranston, even though he was doing minor roles and then started doing bigger roles after Breaking Bad was over. But in general, they usually try while the show's still going on. They tried that with every Game of Thrones actor. None of it worked. They really tried with all of them. They've given up.
Yeah, she's got a couple of things that are in development, but nothing's really going forward yet. So,
speaking of the future, I did read that Vince Gilligan was saying they're never say never, but they're done. Like they're not coming back to this universe anymore. They're both him and Peter Gould are ready to work on new things,
which I think is good and interesting. I just wonder, like, did they just decide to pull the plug on those other two movies, or were there never really going to be movies in the first place?
Yeah, maybe.
So after that riveting and just steamy sex scene, like with so much sexuality in it. Yeah. Shout out to the Breaking Bad fan fiction that we're working on. Kim flies to Albuquerque and visits the courthouse, and we see a lot of the old locations.
Hold on, time out, buddy. You didn't even talk about when she talked to.
We find out what happened on that phone conversation with Jimmy.
I was testing you. You passed the test, of course. I knew you guys were going to. Everybody in the chat thought you guys weren't going to. But she drives her job at Palm Coast Sprinkler, where she composes sales material. After spending most of the day going through her normal work routine, she is perturbed upon receiving a call from a man calling himself Victor St. Clair. On the line is Gene. Wanting to touch base after 6 years, Kim morosely tells Gene to turn himself in. And she's basically very quiet on the phone to the point of driving him to anger.
Yeah.
And he challenges her to do likewise, which ultimately she does. Almost overcome with emotion while he starts being really nasty. She tells Gene that she's glad he's alive before abruptly hanging up. And then she joins her coworkers in singing happy birthday to her secretary. But her mind is clearly somewhere else. But I think you could say that about all of her scenes in this episode, except that sex scene.
he's the opposite of her at this moment. He's all emotion, and we never see that kind of anger from any of the characters that he's ever played.
It's true. And I what I really liked about that is seeing the flip side, and I love the way that they revealed the phone call where we saw like that they had talked last week, but then now we find out what the substance of that conversation was, and it really seemed like they'd had this huge argument. But really it was just him flipping his shit because she won't talk to him. And I just thought, wow, that is one thing I really have, I guess I've caught on to more this season than I have in previous seasons, maybe because now I'm actively talking about it every week and I'm looking more deeply. But this show, Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould have been so good at letting you think any number of possibilities is going to happen, and then it's the like most obvious and simplest explanation, but it's the one you didn't think of, and it's the one that makes the most sense for the characters.
Isn't that Occam's razor?
Yeah.
Wow. This is a real podcast now. You're throwing on terms. Yeah, buddy. Good job.
Endless Mike says the phone call was on Saul's birthday. I missed that. What is that? Where did you? What? Explain
November
further.
12th. That was the day that. Hey, Shakita.
So yeah, give me information about that, and I will confirm it here on the podcast. That's why it's great having the live stream. It's very helpful. But yeah, ultimately, I found that phone call purposefully unsatisfying. I think they did not want us to have these endorphins pumping of being like, yes, they're talking finally after all this time. Instead, they wanted us to feel like it was an unsatisfying conversation, just like obviously Gene felt.
Well, and I think it was an unsatisfying conversation for both of them, because I think what Kim would have liked to have gotten out of it, even though I'm sure she knew she wasn't going to get it, but I think what she would have liked is for him to say, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry about everything. I really screwed up, and I'm going to go turn myself in right now. And obviously that's not what happened. So neither of them got a good resolution from that conversation. It was a pretty terrible, honestly, a pretty terrible decision of his to call her in the first place. But
you would think that the cops have her tapped, like she's using her name. They know
work,
that.
But this is the thing, and like this is the conversation that we were having on Twitter with John too. It's like by this point, like they had long been divorced. What would she know about anything? They hadn't spoken in 6 years. Why would the cops still be listening in?
Because it's like they have no leads, so they got to try something. I feel like that's what it represents on The Wire, and
it's
I take
not
The
that big
Wire
of a thing.
as
they
fact.
Move on. Like the cops their resources are low. They've got other things to do. Phone tapping.
They probably would have reached out and questioned her in the beginning, found out that she had absolutely no contact with him in a couple of years, and dropped it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Collins. In the chat, everyone's predictions were wrong leading to episode 4. The team is too good. Best written show I've ever seen. It's definitely more all around planned and well executed than Breaking Bad, and I still love Breaking Bad more, but for different reasons. And I think this is a little much of even a tighter show than Breaking Bad. And I thought Breaking Bad was a pretty tight show.
It should be better. I mean, look, just like anything, they learned from Breaking Bad. They got better at it. You know.
I will say, I would agree with you guys on the cops if it wasn't put together like it was the biggest crime Albuquerque's ever seen. Like it's a nationwide manhunt for one of the biggest drug lords the United States has ever seen. That's what the show puts forth. So it's not like I'm being ticky-tacky about it and I'm thinking this show's wrong for not showing that. But just.
But also, Kim never met Walt. She had no involvement in any of that.
They don't know that. Cops don't know that.
I think that they can pretty much figure out that there's no evidence that.
But regardless, that if he was going to reach out to somebody, she would be one of the only people that he could possibly reach out to.
Let's just do this. Dylan, you're right. You're a super smart guy.
Fucking hate you, Dan.
Let's move on.
You know what? After next episode, you're off the show for new Better Call Saul episodes.
I will say though that is probably why he called under Victor St. Clair instead of like Gene Takovic. Even.
Oh yeah, and from a payphone too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, so fair enough. Even if they did tap him, because she did say you shouldn't have called, basically saying that's. I didn't feel like she was like that because of their relationship, but more that's dangerous of you to call me here.
Yeah,
it's not a smart move. So we'll say we're both right. Me more though. Yeah. And then she flies to Albuquerque. Yeah, we got all these shots of places we've seen. I saw people talking about it on Twitter or wherever about the different places. And like the airport shot is the exact same from when Walt gets dropped off at the airport in season 2. And obviously different things, but it's interesting. This is the first time we've seen Albuquerque in the black and white, and it does really make it feel different. Like it's showing not only because of that plot line being in black and white, but also like the shadow of what Walter White's done to Albuquerque kind of is kind of cast over the whole city at this point too.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
It kind of looks like what is left after like a volcano or something when there's just this like white ash everywhere and everything just kind of looks very stark.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of traffic around. We don't see a lot of people. It doesn't look like a thriving, booming city. It looks something like Cleveland or something. Kim hands her an affidavit. To Howard Hamlin's widow. She hands her an affidavit.
Another
also
weird haircut choice. I hate to say that was
Kim's.
No,
Cheryl's.
Cheryl.
I agree, but I agree with Kim's also. Kim's hair looks awful.
Kim's hair, yeah, it wasn't.
It's very bad. Obviously on purpose, but she went to the courthouse and she saw a lawyer like prepping somebody
with a ponytail. For crying out loud, she had a ponytail.
Right. And prepping somebody for it, and she's kind of like, "Oh, that was me. I was that before."
Yeah.
And that was when she was happiest too.
The black and white feel gives me a post-apocalyptic vibe, which is fitting. I agree with that. And this was a good point from Mike.
This was so sad.
Mike has been replaced by an automated parking machine.
That was sad.
Now, to be fair, he had already quit working there, and someone else was working. But yes, that was a good little like touch.
I wanted to ask you guys real quick if the thing about Kim in this scene too, where she sees the lawyer and clearly she's like, and by the way, on the video, watching you two drink liquid death at the same time is like a serious advertisement. But she sees the lawyer. She could have moved to Florida and became a lawyer again. I mean, do you guys think she was just so badly scarred by that? I don't know. It would have been nice. It's just a bummer, I guess, to see that she could have been such a great lawyer, even down there. And I don't know. I
think that's part of the tragedy of Kim Wexler is that she was really, really good. She was so talented, genius. I mean, she landed Mesa Verde. Like, she had done so many amazing things at such a young point in her career. And to see her now, she had to walk away from all of that. And she, even though she's still really brilliant and smart, she just physically and emotionally can't do that work anymore. And I think that's just, it's really heartbreaking for her and also for all the people that she didn't get to help serve.
Yeah. I think when you think about the trauma, right, like just to go hand in hand with her not being willing to make decisions, that she doesn't feel like she is worthy or capable of doing the right thing in that role. She just doesn't have the confidence that she would. And so she's removed herself from there because she thinks that she's potentially a bad person or that she's made bad decisions and she's been very dangerous. So she's trying to just get away from that life altogether. Yeah. I think this is something about this brought a point for me about John for Counsel in the chat saying that the black and white cinematography is great for understanding the time jumps. You can you can do so much at not holding our hands through the time jumps if you're doing this black and white. Nobody was confused about what time what was because of the black and white. So it really helped them tell a story without with showing and not telling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hopefully the machine is a German machine. R.I.P. Werner. Michael, I will build a machine for you. And here's another shout out to The Wire in the chat with John Verkount saying the scene of Kim going to the courthouse reminds me of the ending of The Wire, showing how the game never changes and life goes on. I think that's a good point. Or of like the just, which was a point of a lot of The Wire, is just like it's all for nothing, right? Like the whole thing, no matter how it all just kind of continues. I think a lot of stuff involving drugs and crime kind of will explore that. Or the police, like, police spend their whole life trying to stop criminals, but criminals persist after they retire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there are so many types of industries that are like that too. Like I work in a school in my day job, and our new semester starts on Monday, and it's like I have a whole bunch of employees, and some of them are new, but and we're going to have a whole bunch of new students, but the work stays the same. It's like I still have to do a schedule, and I still have to, greet new people and introduce them to our program and how things work. And it's like it's a different group, it's a different sea of faces every year, but it's always the same work, and I've been doing it for years.
And I'll tell you what you have to do. You have to hand out cold cans of liquid death as they walk in. But yeah, well, it's like that's a little different because you're still like making a positive impact on those people's lives. Where I think a cop can think that they make
someone
a
like
positive
what
impact on their
Kim,
community.
Yeah, but I think what Kim was doing was making a positive impact too. And I think that's part of what was actually kind of lovely about that courthouse scene, is that even though she had to walk away from it for her own reasons, there are still people that are willing to take up that work and still trying to put in that effort. It didn't die with her.
Mm-hmm. Karen, why do you have a day job? All the money we make from this podcast, that supports my lavish lifestyle.
It's because I just love working with the public so much.
Good.
That
She's doing pro bono work.
Exactly.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I mean, we are really making hand over fist from this podcast. It's crazy.
I got compensated with this lovely liquid death that I bought myself.
You got 25% off your first can using the promo code BetterTalkSaul. So I'll also say that I think it was cool because while she's sitting there admitting her crimes, I was like, oh, all the people that you're going to get in trouble. Oh, wait, they're all, yep, that person's dead. That person's dead. That person's dead. Oh, yeah, he's presumed dead. And I do love that she said that basically that Jimmy was presumed dead when she knew that he wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to close up a lot of loops, though. I'm sure the cops will be pumped about Lalo and Gus and I don't know.
I wonder if it would benefit to see a perspective of the police right now. We haven't seen a perspective of a police officer since Hank, basically in Ozymandias. We haven't seen the perspective of police at all since then. And I wonder if this would have been an interesting thing to see what the police are up to or what they even fucking think. Like, we don't know anything about what's going on with the police as far as this goes. Maybe that's something we'll get in the finale. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Maybe,
it's too late.
I mean, I think Hank and Gomez were characters in Breaking Bad. Like, they were characters that we followed from the beginning. There hasn't been a character like that in Better Call Saul. So I feel like it would be stepping out of the story, I think, to bring in another perspective like that.
I'm sick of you guys. This podcast would be better if
Karen's right, Dylan's wrong. Let's just
this podcast would be better if it was just me. We all know it. All right, so Kim reveals that she's given a copy of the affidavit, but she also says she's unlikely to be prosecuted if Howard's body is not found, which I didn't expect. But it also says Kim still knows. She still has her instincts.
That's what I mean. Like, I feel like Kim doesn't want to go to jail. And I think she probably thought this through before she did this. She wants to clear her conscience. And she's doing that. But she's not going to be prosecuted. I
think she would be willing to accept the consequences if they were put on her, though. I think she was willing to.
I think that she went and gave an affidavit because she knew it was the right thing to do, because she is prepared to face the consequences if there are any. But I think she also did it knowing that they're very likely not going to ever prosecute her because they've got bigger fish to fry, for one thing. She doesn't know enough about Saul or Walt or any of that to really,
She did help cover up a murder. She helped cover up a murder.
Right, but she didn't murder the guy. She didn't help commit the murder.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, really, what is she gonna be charged with if she gets charged? Probably accessory after the fact or something like that.
Conspiracy I'm sure there's some sort of conspiracy charge there.
I think it would probably be just like accessory after. Because she helped cover up the fact that it had happened. But
it was 6 years ago.
Maybe if I was a cop, and we can drop it after this because I'm gonna get the last word and then we'll end it. Perhaps if I was a cop, I would go and put charges on her to try to put pressure on potentially capturing Jimmy and trying to use it as a bargaining chip in some way. But who knows? Maybe.
Yes, I agree with you, except that she is already. Yeah, but she's already lied and said that she doesn't know if he's even alive, that he's presumed dead.
Right.
So
I don't mean that. I mean on the entire manhunt, it's just an asset. But I'm not even saying that she's going to go talk to her and get the information, but to try to, this is probably a movie thing that movies do, but capture her and try to draw him out because she's going to get the death penalty for it unless he, I don't know.
I hear what you're saying, but think about it this way. Okay.
I accept your apology then.
Think about it this
way. I
stopped
listening. No, I'm just kidding. No, please.
So,
go. Yeah.
Dylan, let's just say that you have been the lawyer to like cartels, and you've been working with.
We don't have to say it; it's real.
And I don't want to get you in trouble by admitting stuff on the record. So, but let's say that you've been part of money laundering and drug trafficking and murders and all this stuff. Your ex-wife from 6 years ago, you really think she's going to be a big bargaining chip just because she's possibly going to go down for helping cover up a murder that she didn't commit when there's no body?
Dylan's face is saying that Karen's right now, by the way. Let's see what your mouth says.
I don't know, but we're both in our corners, and let's leave it at that.
Oh boy, what a bastard! Just say Karen's right.
I also like Kim telling Cheryl that he didn't suffer, and she's like, he didn't suffer. And I thought that was, it's cool that she's able to look her in the eyes and say it. And she's like, I could see you take everything you have. And I love that they didn't say, I don't have anything for you to take. So, because that's what was implied. It's not like the scene of at the end of Rocky 5. Shout outs to Rocky 5. When he's like, don't punch me or I'll sue. And he punches the guy and goes, I ain't got nothing you can sue me for. And that was a really bad Sylvester Stallone impression.
Yes,
but it didn't have to be as heavy-handed in more ways than one than that scene was. Am I right? In 2010, after breaking into the house, Gene finds Mark laying asleep on his living room floor. I really was checked out in this scene. I'm not going to lie. I didn't find it as riveting as maybe they wanted it to be, but maybe they didn't want it to be super riveting. They just wanted it to be kind of a silly little caper. But I'm like, he's going to wake up.
I was riveted. I mean, it wasn't like the Marjorie or the German, oh my God, there's a guy sneaking around in your house. Will they, won't they? But I was still like, okay, of course he's going to wake up.
She was hot too.
I don't know if we mentioned that on the show.
Yeah.
When he looks over the railing and sees the guy's gone, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
This is Nobody Agrees with Dylan podcast.
But real quick, by the way, Jeffy's outside. He pulls up.
Jeffy so much.
He could have left. He got all he needed. And instead, he had to go upstairs, steal some Rolexes, drink his whiskey, which I thought maybe he did as like a diversion to say, look, someone breaks in your house, they're going to have to steal something. But Jesus Christ, buddy, like do it and get out of there. But no, he had to take his sweet ass.
Yeah, was he being purposely reckless? I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. He's a little self-destructive. Clearly.
Good point by John in the chat. I knew this episode would be hard to podcast because of the complexity.
What is that insinuating? That the podcast isn't going well? Thanks, John.
I think he's trying to say, Dylan, Pat, you're trying your best, hon.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. I'd vote for you any day for council.
All right.
I love this conversation. This is something you have to be in the chat for. You're missing
this
really
is what
juicy stuff.
By, yeah,
if you're not watching this on YouTube, you're missing some juicy stuff right here. Anyway, and then Jeff pulls up in front of the house waiting. A police cruiser pulls up behind the cab as two officers take a meal break. If only movies will stop showing cops taking breaks to eat.
Okay, but I loved the way that scene was filmed, because the way the cops pull up behind Jeffy and you think like, oh, why are they, why are they right there? What are they running his plates? Like, what are they doing? And he's freaking out, and it's totally feels like, oh crap, what's about to happen? And then it goes back to the cop car and you see them just having food, and it's like, oh yeah, of course. Like, they're not actually doing anything. We're just being super paranoid right now.
Yeah, but you are right, Dylan. In a lot of TV shows, the cops eating, but I don't know. Do cops do that a lot?
I think that's mostly what they do. Only
it did capture the paranoia of that pretty well. I definitely agree with that. And he tries to speed away and crash into a parked vehicle.
It was so funny.
Now I've seen people talk about this, that he did it on purpose as a distraction for Gene.
He is not that smart. He is not that smart.
I was trying to decide. I didn't think so, but then I was like, but maybe, I don't know.
I wasn't thinking that at all, and I went and read that. I was like, that's not what I thought. And then I went and rewatched that scene, and I was like, I still don't think that. I still don't get that. I mean, I'm not disagreeing, because I'm not a disagreeable guy.
He should be dead.
But I didn't get that, and I want to know what you guys think in the chat. So let me know if you thought that was on purpose or not.
Yeah, I could see both ways. I think that the other guy might have done that, Buddy or whatever his name is, but I don't think Jeffy thinks quickly enough to have thought of something like that.
He's not a freaking hero. Like, I will ensure your getaway by sacrificing myself potentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Like risking both of us getting in trouble. Yeah. Plus it's snowy and icy. And because that's the thing is, like, he hit the gas so fast. And anybody who's ever driven in snow and ice knows if you hit the gas fast, you're going to slip and slide.
Us Southern Californians.
I lived in Quebec for a whole winter, so.
I lived in Wyoming when I was really young, but I didn't drive. But
I also lived in Utah for 6 years. I went to college there, so.
Well, I
didn't go to college for 6 years, just to be clear.
Dan's
I'm not
from Vegas.
Yeah, I've never driven in snow, so.
I don't recommend it. It sucks.
Yeah, there's no reason. You're good. You're good. And then we get in 2010, Gene makes his way back to his residence. In the early hours, he receives a call. I like him doing that thing he did from an earlier season of him waiting for a phone call to have, and he was like trying to
manifest it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, manifesting it. And it's also interesting that he predicted how this is going to go. Real quick.
I was going to say, they keep showing him drinking, which I kind of feel like they haven't done. He doesn't have a drinking problem at any other time in the show, but this purposeful, I'm home, I'm having a drink. They've shown that quite a few times, and I was curious if you guys thought why, and is he inebriated at all when he takes that phone call and he pretends to be his dad, and he's pretty cavalier about him having like great legal representation. Like, why do they keep showing this drinking of his?
I think it's because he has let his guard down. I think that he's gotten really comfortable with where he's at, and he really thinks that like the heat is off him and he's not in danger of getting caught. And
purposely or not purposely letting his guard down?
I think purposely. I think he's gotten to a point where he doesn't think that he's about to get arrested at any minute. He thinks like, hey, I've kind of settled into Omaha well enough, and so now he's like, I can relax. I can have a drink at the end of the night. I don't have to constantly be, watching out the window for looking over my shoulder or all that.
Yeah, I think he's thinking, what's the point? Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point of escaping just to live in monotone black and white world? And John in the chat, the scene with Jimmy staying too long drinking at this guy's house reminds me of Jimmy in season 2 session 2, when Jimmy really wanted to go after a guy fantasizing with Kim, when he's sitting there talking about conning the guy in season 2, and you see him, the camera panning in on his face, zooming in on his face, not panning, and him like making this plan and kind of getting dark and sinister with it. I agree with what they're talking about.
Does he drink the same booze that Howard gave him? Probably not. That's pretty spendy. Probably that's like $100 bottle of booze. So I bet he's not. But that'd be a interesting throwback. He's like torturing himself by drinking that same bottle of scotch. Not the same bottle, same brand.
If they show Zafiro Anejo anymore on this freaking show, I'm just gonna quit the whole fucking thing. If you guys see that in the finale, just do not expect a final episode on it. I'm so done with seeing references to that. I really hope they do not. It's too much for me. Not complaining, but I'm completely complaining. It's a good point too from Mr. Endless in the chat. Didn't have his police scanner. That would have been very helpful to have your police scanner in that scene, and it shows he's not being as diligent as we are with the planet when we drink liquid death, because it's 85% recyclable as opposed to only 15% recyclable from plastic cans. So shout outs to liquid death.
Yeah.
Drink Murder your thirst, liquid death. And then I liked that, the Breaking Bad wiki says tapping into his skills as Saul, Gene tells him because he wasn't found with possession of stolen items, he can't be linked to the crime. I think you want to underpromise, over deliver. So him giving him a time frame that he'll have him out by, bad move. Don't want to give a time frame on there. Just say I'll get you out as soon as possible. Just my opinion on that. But I worked in sales.
He needed to make him feel better. Like he was kind of spiraling, and he didn't want him to be like, oh, this guy is actually a con, and we've been conning people. Like he needed
to exactly. He needed to give Jeffy that assurance so that he didn't just freak out and start blabbing.
Gene
if Karen and I both agree, that doesn't mean you're just wrong. It means we're smart.
How do I meet that? Okay. Gene calls Marion to help him get her son out of jail. When Gene explains that bond declarations are looser in Omaha than Albuquerque, something jogs Marion's memory. She performs a search on her new computer while he drives to her house. Gene finds Marion in the kitchen. This is the most menacing we've ever seen this character.
Oh, yeah. He was going to strangle an old lady, for crying out loud.
And at that point, like, he's going to strangle her so he doesn't get caught. But if he doesn't bring her to the police station to bail him out, he's going to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps that's something that ran through his mind. But
I think he kind of realized, wait a second, there's no possible way that I can do this, get away with it, and everything's going to be okay. This is going to make things a million times worse for me.
I like that he found his old commercials on YouTube.
I loved the way that was shot, where you see the bit of color in his glasses. Yeah. That was
the
cool.
Last time we saw color in the black and white storyline is in the very, very first episode, the pilot episode, when it showed him sit down and crack a beer and put on one of his old Better Call Saul tapes, commercials. Mm-hmm. So it just shows that's bringing his vibrancy, his color to his life of his old flamboyant commercials that he had. So I have
to be honest, I thought it was kind of corny, like at first, like, oh yeah. But then when I was doing some research and I read what you just said, Dylan, about it happening in the first episode, I was like, okay, that's cool.
It's those bookend moments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gene rips the phone out of the wall and fashions it into a garrote? Is that what that's Garrett? That's what that's called, a garret?
Yeah, it's like GARROTE, but yeah, I don't know how to say it.
OTTE.
Yeah.
But I've never heard that word. Maybe I haven't. I didn't think about it. But you're going to strangle somebody. And there was like a serial killer movie with Keanu Reeves in like late 90s.
It was early 2000s. I just watched it recently, actually.
That's what that makes me think of. What's that? What was it called?
I'm trying to remember. I just found it randomly one day on like Showtime or something, and I was like, "Yeah, what the heck? I'll watch this." And
we'll come back. I love Karen and I's brain being able to pick the most obscure movies out from everywhere. The Watcher?
You guys,
The Watcher.
The Watcher, yeah,
Yes!
from like 2001 or something.
Off the Dome. That's what that makes it, because like the cover had him doing that on the cover, and that was like his thing.
yeah.
Oh
you
yeah,
guys
the
don't play
Hitman
video
games
games.
also.
I was gonna say, thanks,
Yeah.
Mike. You upstaged me. Hitman, you choke the shit out of people constantly with that.
Thanks,
That's what
Mike.
made me think of.
But yeah, I've never heard that word, but we can move on from that.
2000. It was from 2000.
And I love her life alert button, and he, she basically feels like he's gonna kill me if I press this button. And then once she sees a little look on his face of not having it in him, she pushes the button and says that it's fugitive Saul Goodman, and he bones out, as the kids say.
Do they?
This is the first and only episode of Better Call Saul to be solely written by Vince Gilligan. He has previously co-written episodes. These episodes include Uno, Click, and Mabel. It is also the one of the first episodes from the finale to be solely directed and written by the same person, along with Tom Schnauz of the previous episode. Peter Gould will be writing and directing the finale of Better Call Saul.
Nice.
I will say also, when she breaks down the bus, I didn't bring up, but somebody extends their hand to her and she doesn't take it. I think it's another thing about her not deserving the empathy from another person, but it could also be because of COVID, and she wants to make sure to maintain 6 feet of distance.
I mean, you should, because nobody should want COVID. But also on the bus, did you notice the woman that was sitting next to Kim?
No.
She was played by Vince Gilligan's wife, and she also played the principal or something or not the principal, but one of the teachers at Walt's High School.
That's nice.
Holly is her name.
Oh, do you think that Holly, his Walt's daughter, was named after her? Probably.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Bravo, Vince.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It all comes together.
Should I incorporate my wife into this podcast?
The Sopranos with that the cord wrapped around his hand, from what the guy that he went and killed when he was taking Meadow to look at colleges. Yeah. And Emilio's character makes the actor with the most time in between appearances in Breaking Bad universe, because his last appearance was in second episode 14 years ago to this episode, which is fun. I kind of scrolling through. Several Easter eggs were hidden in the cancer scam victim's home. One bank statement has $737,612 in his account. $737 was the amount Walt originally wanted to cover his family's expenses before he passed away. That's what he calculated. That's funny. And when Jimmy looks for the passwords, his desks he's running through is very similar to the Coca-Cola desk he requested Davis in Maine. Okay, that's not that interesting. And then when two small other things, when Kim exits Jimmy's office after signing divorce papers, Jesse is initially hidden behind a pole before the camera slowly changes its angle to make him appear. Vince Gilligan used the same effect during that Walter and Skyler in the episode of Felina.
She's sitting there smoking a cigarette.
Right. That is like such a chilling scene. And the camera pans around and he's just standing there. It was so great. I didn't think about that. But Kim and Glenn watch an episode of The Amazing Race in this episode. This episode is from season 17. It's entitled I Want to Be in the Circus, That's Where I Belong, which originally aired on November 7th, 2010. This is the most recent episode before the phone call on Jimmy's birthday, November 12th, 2010. So it was 5 days before. Okay, that's fine. And then this is chronologically, this is the first appearance of Jesse Pinkman in the entire chronology. So
that would make sense.
Anyway, let's.
By the way, they're being sued. Real quick, the Liberty Tax place or something is suing them for apparently making them seem like they're part of it.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah,
like how they got away with that, because it's not the same name, but it's similar enough, and then they use the Statue of Liberty like logo and stuff. So yeah, I wondered.
Coming after him.
Let's get into our favorite part of each episode, which is the segments, shall we?
Please.
All right, the segments is when we go over our favorite parts of the episode. Let's go in the first one, which is the worst decision of the week.
Ladies and gentlemen, the worst decision of the week.
All right, let's start off the worst decision of the week. Let's start it with fan favorite co-host on the show, Dan Fields.
Oh, wow. What an honor.
You guys can see their faces. They were riveted on who I was going to say.
Who's it going to be?
I thought he was going to say himself, honestly.
737 was also the plane model that crashed. That's also a fun little Easter egg. Thank you, John.
For this one, I wrote down the affidavit. Like, I thought maybe that would come back to mess her up. But then after talking to you guys through it, I don't think it will. So I'm sorry, I don't really actually have a great worst decision. I mean, every decision Jimmy made the entire episode was an awful decision, but I didn't have a really good singular worst decision.
Not murdering Carol Burnett immediately. Murder.
Oh, he should have just bonked her on the head. Elder law. Yeah.
I'll just, the reason I wouldn't say that's a worst decision because I think it was a calculated and well thought out decision she made, and she was willing to face the consequences. So regardless of whether or not she get in trouble or not, I think didn't matter to her at that point. I feel like she felt a hole that she decided she was facing the consequences could potentially fill.
Yeah, maybe having sex with that loser was a bad decision too.
Yep.
About Walter and Jesse, or are you talking about Kim and that guy?
No spoilers. Come on.
Karen Peterson.
Give it away.
Worst decision.
Well, I would say that I had two. One is putting Miracle Whip in tuna salad.
That's what's popping off in the chat right now. Everybody's saying Miracle Whip.
Like, using Miracle Whip in general, I agree with you guys, is not a great decision, but the worst part of that is putting it in tuna. Ugh, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
But my other
Miracle Whip.
It's not mayonnaise.
It's mayonnaise, right?
How does it differ from mayonnaise?
It's got different seasonings in it, so it's got a different flavor. It's like, tangy and a little bit sweeter.
You guys are
I don't want to know why. It kind of tastes like spoiled mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Now you're speaking my lang.
But what I really think is probably the worst decision of the week, and I think what ultimately will get Kim in trouble, is the fact that she lied and didn't admit that she knows for a fact that Jimmy is still alive.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. I think in general, his decisions going through the house of that guy are bad decisions, but him also lollygagging in it. But that's what makes me think that he doesn't care about it anymore. I think that he kind of is done with running. So I don't know if I could say it's a worse decision necessarily. Let's get into the next one, which is the funniest moment of the week.
Hey, that's the funniest moment of the week.
I'll go first. The crashing in the car. Done. Okay. Dan Fields.
No, that's what made us all laugh the most on the recap.
Gotta say something different though. You can't copy mine. That's why I went first.
There wasn't anything else funny.
Hilarity.
And saying yup during sex. I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually funnier to me. Yeah. Jesse's conversation with her with Kim, it's just funny how he tries to be a regular person, but he slips in all the yos and the like kind of stupid things that he says, and to try to be relatable with kind of more esteemable people than him. And I find that funny to see.
Yeah. I also think that just the mundaneness of the office in Florida and how like everyone got so excited about singing happy birthday. I've worked in a lot of offices We've done a lot of birthday cake. No one has ever been that excited to sing happy birthday.
Oh, there's gold in like the food coloring. Like, oh man, that sounds expensive.
These eggs. Wow.
Wow.
Good job.
Let's get into the next one, which is the best line of the week.
Best line of the week.
We've spent years, guys, of editing these in after we recorded, and it's so nice to just rock and roll with it while we're recording. I love that we're able to get these during it. Dan, you've probably never heard these, right? You've never heard these drops.
No, not until this season.
It's been years of
I didn't realize it.
It's not like you didn't realize that I edited music into it.
No, I don't listen to the podcast. I do the goddamn thing.
Yeah,
let's do it again.
I wouldn't expect you to go back and listen to it necessarily. But anyway, Karen, do you want to go best line of the week first?
You know what? For me, there were a couple moments that I thought were pretty good, but I think the one that just kind of emotionally hit me hardest was when Kim is talking to Cheryl, and Cheryl does say, you mentioned this earlier, but Cheryl says, "I could sue you. I could take everything you've got," and Kim just says, "Yep." Like, she doesn't try to argue with her. She doesn't try to tell her, "I don't have anything." It's just like, yeah, you know what? You could do that, and you would be totally right to do it.
Yeah, that's a good
Would
one.
you guys say that Jesse was kind of trying to holla at Kim?
Maybe a little.
Yeah, maybe a
little bit. Who wouldn't?
Right?
And then he settles for Walt. This is mine right here from Mr. Endless. He was when I knew him. That's the one I'll probably remember from the episode by far the most. So I'll go when he was when I knew him. Saying that speaks volumes, right? She's saying she doesn't know him anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the good, like the back and forth of like he was good. Like, what does that exactly mean?
Right.
I wrote that down, and I did write down an honorable mention of when he said, "Have a nice life, Kim." Just like a nice cherry on top of that awful scene. Like that, just saying that to someone is like a pejorative. It's rude, and especially to a woman that you were married to and loved. And yeah, that was rude. And the crying scene, which is no lines, of course, was just unbelievable. So
I'll say also there was a little bit of a similarity to his coldness with Kim, with maybe the example set forward to him by Chuck when he had that conversation with the truth is you never really mattered to me in the first place. Don't bother, that conversation he had before he committed suicide.
Yeah. The difference there, though, and I agree with you. I'm not saying you're wrong. But I think the difference there is that Chuck didn't mean it. I mean, Chuck did mean it, and Jimmy didn't.
Do you think that he really meant that? I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
I think he did. Yeah,
I think he did. I think that was the big thing about Chuck, is that Chuck is the older brother in the prodigal son story. He's the one who stayed and did everything quote unquote right, and didn't get the love and adoration of his parents, and he was really bitter and jealous and angry about it.
Yeah. Of course I can't disagree with that, right? But obviously brother relationships or sibling relationships are a little bit more complicated than that, but I agree with what you said for sure. But I also, regardless of whether or not he meant it or not, I think no matter what, he knew that was the most effective way to hurt him.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So regardless of, the nuance of that, it was a pointed language that's what brought me to thinking he was embellishing it perhaps a little bit in order to hurt him the worst he could. And it worked. Let's get into the last one, the penultimate drop, which is the prediction of the week.
The prediction of the week.
I'm going to hit...
Not the penultimate. This is the last one. The penultimate would have been the one we just did.
No, because after next week, there's nothing left to predict.
Right, no, it's the
I see what you're saying.
The penultimate prediction of the week, because there's going to be one more prediction of the week. How are we going to make a prediction?
There is no prediction.
There won't be a prediction next week.
Well, we'll have to predict. We'll have to make a prediction for the fan fiction that's coming out. Shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Yeah. But two, about what we think is in the epilogue that we'll just make up.
I like it. Sure.
John just put a comment in the chat that I just wanted to comment on really quick.
Yeah.
The Chuck saw this in Jimmy and didn't know how to tell anyone.
Okay.
I agree with that, except for I think that he was trying to tell
repeat
everyone.
What he said. Sorry, repeat what he said.
Chuck saw this in Jimmy and didn't know how to tell anyone. Like that this was the potential that he had, that he could be this person who did these horrible things. And I think that I think he was telling everybody, but no one would listen to him because they did just see him as kind of being the bitter older brother instead of, someone who was bitter because he knew better.
Can you imagine if Chuck had seen Saul? Like it would have blown his mind, and he would have been like, "See, I told you this whole time. Like I was saying he was bad. But I didn't even think he'd get this bad."
Mm-hmm.
He would have had a fire in his belly if he did. He would have like burned the place down. I mean, like, I think he would have incinerated their relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would have been too hot. It would have been too hot to touch. Like, it just. I'm just saying,
But would Jimmy have gone over that line if Chuck hadn't died?
I don't know. I
don't know if we could ever know, but I think a big part of the reason was because he just wanted to distance himself so much from the name McGill.
He kept burning him, and no matter how much he scolded him, he continued to do it, and
John has a good prediction in the chat, and I think he was kidding, but if this is actually true,
damn you!
Oh, sorry, that we will see Chuck next week. Will we get a flashback of Chuck on the show? Wow, that'd be interesting.
I mean, I've had a burning desire for that for a while.
Yeah, have you?
I mean, he technically got fired from the show, so I wonder if he'd be willing to come back, but we never know.
Good. No, keep going. It's going to come back around and be funny. Keep going.
You'd swear listening to the podcast that Dan absolutely hates me, but I do get the impression he actually enjoys my company. Dan, why don't you go with your prediction of the week? You use that as your prediction of the week?
No, I'm struggling. You know what I thought I would think is to predict like what's going to happen to Saul himself, and I think he's going to get away. I think he's going to get away, and they're going to probably end with him maybe miserable and sad again. And not to say the cycle continues, but I think I would be upset if he died or if he just got caught by the cops. I think he's going to get away. If I had to predict, but I really don't know. I don't have a clue what's going to happen.
Do you think that John predicting that Chuck will be back next week would be a hot take?
Boy, you are still going. Everyone's gonna turn the podcast.
I don't think. I'm just saying. I don't think it's a hot take. I think it would be interesting to see him.
It would be. You're on fire right now.
And back. I just think that would set the internet ablaze. Karen.
I think that Jimmy would actually fare pretty well in prison because he knows how to survive. And I think that what we will see is him actually, still, getting kind of back into his old like schmoozy con thing behind bars. That's what I think. That's where I think he's going to get caught. He's going to go to prison, and I think he's going to end up being okay there.
Which would kind of be a happy ending for him if he could be in prison with some like weird power and being like conning and scamming again.
Mm-hmm. Like,
does he deserve a happy ending?
I wouldn't say that he does, but I think that feels really true to the character. Like, he's always been Slippin' Jimmy. I think he's gonna end up, as Slippin' Jimmy again. I think he's done all this stuff to try to get away from that, and ultimately, it's who he's always been.
That would be great. That would be great to see him taking a power dynamic in prison.
Go ahead, let's hear it. Come on. What's your prediction? Something spark in your mind? Like, let's hear it.
What is that? What does spark have to do with anything, man? I think that no matter how we think it's going to go, it's not going to go down the way we think it is.
Yeah.
That's my prediction.
Thanks, Mike Trout. All right.
I just like trying to predict at this point. I wanted to steal John's just because that was the easiest way out. But like, just like everything that's transpired about the relationship between him and Kim and where the show has gone, there's minor things we predict, but in general, we're just along for the ride. So why predict, guys?
Because those are the rules, and you made us predict, so you have to as well.
I think that I would like to see some sort of redemption arc with him and Kim, but everything that I can predict, it just sounds like it's not something they would do. I think the closest thing that I can, like, all the predictions I keep coming up with, like they want us to think this, and they're going to do something different. They're going to leave us feeling differently than we thought they were going to. I have to say how cool it would be to see just the final of him, like, sparking up the first, that wasn't a pun, the first idea of, like, the first little minor power move he makes in prison to insinuate that he's going to be on the rise for that, and setting up a sequel series to see what it's like for him in prison.
Yeah, maybe.
I think, and I think that it would be a good type of tragedy to have Kim go to jail. If Kim goes to jail,
I would not find that satisfying. I would not like that.
If Kim goes to jail and he gets away,
that would be the worst possible ending.
That would be a tragic ending. But hey, when shows end the way we want them to, it can sometimes be unsatisfying. Or we're happy. So that's it. Why don't you tell people where they can follow you on the internet, Dan Fields?
You can follow me at Dan the Beast on Twitter.
Karen Peterson, say people want to hear more of exactly what you're putting out there on the internet. Where can they do that?
They could go to Twitter or Instagram or Letterboxd or all three and find me at Karen M. Peterson.
Karen M. Peterson, everything is Karen M. Peterson for all of those services, right? For me, you can follow me at the Dylan Schuck. The Dylan Schuck. Follow the show at BetterTalkSaul, and email us at BetterTalkSaul@gmail.com. Last time to get some thoughts in. Well, we'll do a final episode after the week after the whole series is over, and just kind of have a mailbag episode and kind of a goodbye to the whole to Better Talk Saul. So just
mostly
like
just because we can't let go.
Yeah, we can't let go. I'll never let go. Anyway, we're looking forward.
I'm really sad this is almost over, you guys.
Of all times to join in for an episode, join in for next episode. Usually, and we've been pretty good about this, it's Wednesdays. It's at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can find our YouTube channel and put on alerts on there so it notifies you when you're going live. If you go to our Twitter at BetterTalkSaul and subscribe and give us a like and join us in the conversation. It's so much more fun when you guys are here. And thank you to everybody in the chat. It was a blast having you guys in here. And give us a like. Drop us a like right there. Smash that like button. Set it on fire.
There you go.
And that's it. I'm Dylan Schuck.
I'm Dan Fields.
I'm Karen Peterson.
And we'll see you next week.